Paul Hoyt, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Um,
It is a pleasure.
and I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Is that okay?
That's okay. I appreciate that. These days when I go to networking events and say, you always get the opportunity to say who you are and what you do and where you live and all that. I introduce myself as a fantastic business consultant and an incredible personal coach. I'm a fantastic business consultant because I've been in business for 50 years. I've been a business consultant and coach for the last 23 years. I've written books and I've helped hundreds of business owners develop and implement their growth plans. I'm an incredible personal coach because I've been on my own journey. As I like to say, I've been trying to get my shit together for 50 years and it's really starting to pay off. And it, and it is that journey, that journey of coming from a place of being miserable and tense and anxious and angry so much of the time into becoming a lighthearted and cheerful person, a loving and kind and even wise person, and being able to be humble and own that confidence because that journey has been such an interesting and long process for me.
And I'm so pleased that you agreed to come on this podcast because you're really an example, I think, of somebody who has literally, stretched the boundaries of what we would think is possible in terms of how our potential is bound by our personality, by our basic personality, the worldview that you come into the world with, or the way that your basic personality structure functions. And I mean, I know your story already, and the listeners are going to hear it in a minute, but like you've really been able to transform your basic personality
Yeah.
in a way that I think most people would think is beyond what what's possible for people in one lifetime. So tell us a little more about your journey.
I think the story of my personal growth journey probably started when I was 19 years old and I was in college and a nice young lady invited me to a party on Friday night and I just went, oh, okay, I guess I'll be there. And she said, what's wrong with you? I just invited you to a party. How come you're so grumpy? And I thought to myself, well, and I'll probably be grumpy when I get there and nobody's going to like me and I'll have to go home early and I was just in this incredible frump. And I sat back and thought about that. And I realized that I was only happy like 20 or 30 minutes a day.
Oh,
And the rest
wow.
of the day, I was just serious and grumpy and focused and determined but just, tense and anxious and stressed most of the time. And I just had to break away from that. And so I started meditation and that didn't really work for me, but I had this beautiful epiphany one day about the first thing that worked for me. And the first thing that worked for me was simply total body relaxation. I would just lay in bed or sit in a chair and just decide that I was going to give myself permission to just let go of all that physical tension and stress. And I started with my toes and worked up through my nose, and after I would release all of the tension and stress from my body, I would finally end up, by the way, with my jaw because I used to walk around with a clenched jaw all of the
Mhm.
time. That was the place in my body where I was manifesting the most stress and tension. And after I was able to let go of that, then I could, slow down my thoughts a little bit and begin to relax my soul, begin to relax myself emotionally, mentally, and
Did
spiritually, in addition
did
to
you learn this somewhere? Sorry to interrupt, but I mean, like at 19, did you just kind of have an inspiration to do that, or did you hear it from somewhere or learn somewhere how to do that?
well, I was also a psychology student. I got an undergraduate degree in psychology, and like so many other people who get degrees in psychology, I was really just trying to work on myself, right?
Yeah.
Really trying to find ways to get myself happy. But I remember one person said that a good way to release physical tension was to would really push on your hands, to create a lot of tension and then release it. And then I thought, well, wait, I've already got all this tension. Why don't I just focus on releasing it? I don't have to do that. That doesn't help me at all. But I just decided to give myself permission. Call it an epiphany, call it a breakthrough, an insight. At some point in time, I decided to give myself permission to just totally relax a couple of times a day, 10 to 20 minutes a day, because I couldn't really meditate because my mind was far, far too active. When I looked and when I would sit down in a chair and try to watch my thoughts, boy, what I saw was scary. It was
Wow.
2 or 3 parallel streams of thought, all angry and yelling about, I could have done that and I should have done this. And I'm going to do that. And why'd this person do that? And, terrible victim and prisoner energy that was just going through my thoughts. So the starting point for me was with my physical body.
I just think that's amazing that it occurred to you to do that, and that it uh, you know, kind of generated the wheels turning that eventually led to a much bigger transformation. Just because in the work that I'm doing, I'm just now getting to the part where I can work with my physical body. That's a big part of how or what made me need to develop the system that I have of Bach flower alchemy. I needed something to help me um, get into my body, because the other side goes okay for me in terms of how I can. I mean, I've done meditation for a long time, and the block for me is kind of in the opposite way. So it's just kind of interesting, but it definitely happens in the body. There's no doubt of that.
Yeah, it's a very important component. I talk about the layers of self, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, and how those layers interact and impact each other. When we think good thoughts, we can help heal the body. When we relax the body, we can help heal the mind and the spirit. We're multiple layers on our systems of who we are. So, the next step was that after I was able to learn to relax myself physically, I could relax my thoughts enough to actually do meditation. And then I started meditating and started, of course, reading lots of good books on personal development and growth, and studying all kinds of religions and really working on myself. And over the course of the next 10 years, I made a tremendous transformation from the ages of 19 to the age of 30. At 30, I became a person who was a cheerful and A player in a professional environment, and I only got angry 4 or 5 times a day, and only got, pissed off at 2 or 3 people a day. But for the rest of the time, I was pretty friendly and easygoing and pretty successful. And then I got stuck for 25 years. For 25 years, I got stuck in that process of just um, feeling pretty good and doing pretty well, but also also being angry many, many times a day. And I thought that's just the way that you had to be. That's the way that life was, that there was no higher potential than that, is somebody that was mostly happy but still got pissed off, several times a day. And then I had an opportunity to talk to a counselor, actually a friend of mine from college, a a a preacher at a local church, and because I was going through a tough time at that particular time, and I related to him, hey, I guess that's just the way that life is. That you can be happy a good part of the time, but you're still going to be grumpy and pissed off and serious and anxious a fair amount of time every day. And he says, "Oh no, Paul, that's not true. There are some ladies at my church who I'm just convinced from the moment they wake up in the morning, all they're doing is sending love and light to other people at the church. They're constantly on the phone, they're constantly volunteering, and they are the most beautiful people that I've ever met." Well, pardon me, but in that moment, I thought to myself, that's who I want to be.
Huh.
That's the person that I want to be. I want to be one of those people that is sharing love and light with people all of the time. And that sponsored me to keep on that journey. And I had a beautiful epiphany when I was 55 years old. I woke up one morning grumpy, went down, went down to my computer and was just kind of grumpy and was sitting there and thinking, gosh, if I could just remember all of this stuff, I know that I would feel better and I wouldn't be so grumpy all the time. And, I'd just be a healthier and happier person. And it occurred for me to ask myself, well, if I was going to remember, what is it that I would remember? I started saying, well, I would remember, who I was and what I was in this beautiful planet on which we live. And I'd remember my purpose in life. And I'd remember this beautiful spirit that we all have within us. And I'd remember this amazing power that we have to refocus our attention, to shift our energy, to lift our spirits. And I would be that person that I want to be much more often. And it became an incredibly beautiful meditation for me. It became a 45-minute meditation that I recorded and put out on a CD and probably listened to 1,000 times. And
Wow.
every single time I listened to it, it lifted my spirits. It was just, it was my silver bullet. It was my magic pill. It was what I wanted, what I needed. But I found out that when I would listen to it on the way to work and I'd listen to it on the way home from work. But during the day, I would still, be tension and stress, and I'd still get periods of time where my vibration would be lower, and I wanted something else. And then one day I was sitting, kind of in a silent place, and I was reading something, and I came across this word, and the word was jubilation. And I read that word and I thought, holy mackerel, every time I see that word, it lifts my spirits just a little bit. That there's some magic in that word, that word represents an energy, represents a concept.
Mm.
And I begin to think about, well, are there other words like that? Yeah, like happiness, silliness, playfulness, laughter, merriment, amusement, glee. And I started focusing on those individual words and using them in combinations to lift my spirits, because I found out that if I would just say courage, 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 that wasn't nearly as powerful or impactful to me as if I said courage, daring, bravery, and boldness. Courage, daring, bravery, and boldness was much more powerful than just
So
saying
cool.
any of those words. That became my energetic, focus. And then the last little part of this story was I was out walking my dog one day and wanting to be peaceful and calm and relaxed and surrendered, and it just wasn't working. It just, for whatever reason, energetic focus through the use of synonyms was not working in that moment. So I thought to myself, well, okay, what do I got to do? What do I got to do here? What do I got to do first? Well, okay, first I have to see the gap. I have to realize that I'm not who I want to be and not feeling the way they want to be. And then I got to believe that there's something that I can do to close that gap. And when I do, I'm going to feel better. And then I've got to choose to invest the time necessary to actually shift myself. And then I have to actually get into doing the shifting. And then I can feel the way I want to feel. And that became my golden sequence. I see, I believe, I choose, I shift, I am. I see, I believe, I choose, I shift, I am. And I realized that it wasn't just energetic focus, it was an energetic progression that was allowing me to feel the way I want to be. And I began to develop dozens and even hundreds of different sequences of thought and action that allowed me to shift my energy. And the key was that I could use them anytime and anywhere. I can use them in a conversation with somebody. I can use them when I'm in my car. I don't have to close my eyes or sit in the chair or you sit in a
Yeah.
lotus position. And so I developed the program called mind sequencing, which is my special technique of focusing my attention so that I can remember who I am and when I am at my best and shift my energy and lift my spirits anytime and anywhere. And these days, instead of being grumpy or instead of being happy only 20 minutes a day, I am grumpy maybe 20 minutes a month.
Oh, wow.
I got a little angry with my wife about 8 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago. It just something, I was not in my best mood, of course, and something she said, and I said something a little bit nasty back to her, you know, like get your shit together, or something grumpy, and it was embarrassing to me. But since I've been in a process of daily self-reflection and keeping track of my mood and my spirits now for 15 years, I went back and I looked, and the previous time that I had gotten angry was 9 months before that. So
Wow.
in July of 2023, I got angry for a few minutes. And in April of 2024, I got angry for a few minutes. But I've I've learned to live my life in a wonderful way. And one of the most important things I've learned is that everybody can do that. We can teach ourselves, we can train ourselves at a subconscious level to be able to shift our energy. As it turns out, this awakening process, this shifting process is a skill. It's a skill,
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
it's a habit that we can develop, and it becomes the most valuable habit, the most valuable skill of our entire lifetime.
I'm so curious and I need to ask, like, what can you say about, it's maybe a ridiculous question, the quality of your relationship? I mean, I can't even imagine how that kind of shift in you would affect the quality of your relationship, the quality of life that your wife is experiencing, let's say. What does she have to say about the change in you?
I I think that she is mostly grateful, and I think that she really does appreciate being around somebody who doesn't carry a lot of tension and stress. She had a rough childhood. She deserves to have somebody in her life who is mostly calm and kind and loving and concerned and doting in a way, and asks her what she needs and what she wants, and takes care of her.
But
Uh,
she spent a lot of years with a grumpy version of you.
well, because when we got together at age 22 and 23, we were both fairly grumpy. She
Uh-huh.
had a very rough childhood. Her father was a terrible alcoholic, and my mother had had a really rough life as well. She was grumpy and serious. We get our emotional states, our patterns from the role models in our lives, and
Sure.
crap that happens to us. So I think honestly, looking back, she reminded me of my mother. It was grumpy and serious most of the time, and laughing every once in a while, but not too often, because life's tough and you got to work hard,
Right.
having that kind of attitude towards life. But I'm happy to say that both of us have made a lot of progress on our journey. In her particular case, naturally evolving. In my particular case, persistently finding paths and walking paths. And I've probably read 10 times the personal development books that she has. But I think people can naturally evolve over time as well. That's one of the surprises in the book, that one of the books that I wrote, called Surprises on the Road to Enlightenment. And is that some people naturally grow in love and light without seeming to walk a path at all. So if you find somebody in your life who is not particularly religious or not particularly spiritual, that doesn't mean that they're not evolving.
Yeah.
They may just be evolving through osmosis. They may be just pulling in the positive love and light, the contagious positive energy from the people around them, and gradually making their own evolution in those ways. Not every point of evolution needs to be a conscious choice. Sometimes do that. I believe, and I think you believe too, that there's a limit in that I think that without consciously focusing time and energy and attention on our own inner work and our own personal growth, we just grow to the point to where we're comfortable and we feel safe, but we don't really go beyond that. We don't see this incredible potential that we all have.
Well, this is something that I've been wanting to circle back to that you mentioned before, because there was a kind of a critical point in your own journey where you were feeling much better, but you knew you didn't want to settle for that.
No.
And settling is a really interesting concept that it comes up a lot in my work because I like to work with people who have already done a lot of inner work, who have already created a lot of what we would call conventional success, and who other people would be glad to be where they are. And yet these people don't want to settle. They don't want to settle for this. And there's a little bit of guilt around that, like this should be enough for me, or why should I, risk a lot of things in my life to have more? Like, is there something wrong with wanting more all the time? And the energy of settling is really um, toxic to the kind of breakthrough that you experienced, that my clients want to experience, something really outside of the norms. Because yes, the typical amount of work and methods can bring you out of the bad place into a place of relative comfort, but experiencing exponential growth or really breaking past your own glass ceiling, that requires a, a commitment to not settling.
It does. And I think that comes from self-awareness. Yeah, I think that it would be accurate to say that I'm a fairly sensitive person. Especially these days, I cry at movies and cry when I hear a good song. And, but in the old days, I was still a sensitive person, but not a crier, but one that really felt the tension and stress that was coming from other people. I know today that I describe myself as a person who has extreme self-awareness, that I am really conscious of how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking most of the time. And these days, I don't let myself slip very far into the flatness or below that comfort level. And when I do, when I wake up and say, okay, I'm just comfortable, but I could be excellent. Or I could be, as I like to say, that well, here's a little speech I like to give. It's called the elevator speech. Now, it's not the same as the 11-second
Yeah.
speech that you do when you get, in an elevator with somebody that you've been trying to get a meeting with. But this is about the concept of an elevator. The concept of an elevator is you get in the elevator and you push the button and you either go down or you go up. So many people, when it comes to their own personal life experience, wait until that elevator goes to the basement before they ever press the up button. They get down at the bottom and say, oh, I can't go any lower than this. Wake up in the gutter sometime, or they realize they just got really angry and said some nasty things to somebody, and they go, wait a minute, I gotta fix this. And they start to push the up button, and they move from the tension and stress into the flatness, and then they move up to being comfortable, and they go, phew, okay, now I feel better. But the key is that we can press that up button whenever we want. When we're comfortable, we can press the up button and move into being excellent. And
I love that.
when we're excellent, we can press the up button and move into being awesome, and then into phenomenal, and then even into what I call the divine, where you're surrendered to love and light, and you love everyone and everything deeply, deeply, and completely. And that is such a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Oh, how beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That's that's really lovely. It's very inspiring to listen to you talk.
Thank you.
I would love if you would share something that you've been working on. I think this is in an upcoming book that you're working on. You told me that you had settled on 3 reasons that we keep our beliefs. Would you share that with us?
I'd be happy to. And it is on an upcoming book, which is tentatively titled The Truth About Truth. It's a
Mm,
book I've been working on for, 4 or 5 years now, because this whole subject of, how we determine what is true and how we determine our beliefs and our opinions and our conclusions. And there's so many different forms of truth and sources of truth. And one of the one of the hang-ups, one of the sticking points in that is our tremendous tendency to hang on to what we think is true, and then even get engaged in confirmation bias to where we can't even see any evidence that would point to us not being, or what we believe to be true as not being true. But I think there are three primary reasons why people are, as your words, loyal to their own beliefs or
Yeah.
hanging on to their current truths. Number one is cognitive dissonance,
Yeah.
because it takes mental energy in order to consider the alternatives. A lot of times our brain wants to think of, okay, well, I'm done. I figured this one out. This is the way it is. This is the political party that I belong to. This is the church that I belong to. This is the belief system that I have. And now I don't have to think about those things anymore. And when somebody comes up and suggests to us that there might be a slightly different perspective or a slightly different path that we could take, you can, nope, I don't have to think about that anymore. I'm moving on. I'm thinking about other things. So that's cognitive dissonance. It takes mental energy to consider the options. The second one is self-image. If I change my mind, then that would mean I'm a weak person, and would mean I made a mistake. And I don't want to think of myself as a person that makes mistakes. I want to think of myself as a person that makes great decisions and sticks with it. This is who I am. This is the way that it's always going to be. And to admit otherwise, or to think, even consider something else, would mean that I have made a mistake in that commitment to my own belief. And the third one, I think, is the most powerful one of all, and that is the community that we surround ourselves with. So if I decide that this is who I am, this is what I believe, I go find other people who believe the same way. You want to think that the earth is flat, you can go on social media and find hundreds of thousands of people who agree with you that scientists have been deceiving us for hundreds, even thousands of years. The earth really is flat. It's not a sphere. How can that possibly be true? You can find people to agree with you no matter what you think. And we surround ourselves with other true believers. And then we are so attached to that truth, because if we were to even consider the options, it would take mental energy. We'd have to admit we're making a mistake. And then I'd have to tell my community that, maybe this isn't right. And then they would kick me out and they would disparage me, because the more radical the belief, the more likely your community is to really think poorly of you if you consider any other options. So those are the big three reasons we hang on to what we believe, and that becomes hanging on to our self-image too. It's cognitive dissonance, it's the fear of making a mistake or admitting a mistake, and it's the impact on the community and the relationships that we have.
That's really insightful. I love that. I love all of that. Paul, thank you so much for everything that you've shared here today. I mean, we could go on forever because you're such an interesting person. And I need to get and read all of your books, because this is really a lot of wisdom here. I feel very grateful to have met you, and thank you for being part of this show. And I hope we'll do this again at some point.
I do too. If I may, I'd like to leave everybody with one little sequence that has really, really worked for me. And that is
Wonderful.
the simple path of three questions. You can walk this path as many times as you want, anytime that you want. Question number one is, who am I when I am at my best? Because I want everybody to have their best self as their best friend. I want everybody to know that they have this incredible greatness, this joy, this love, this light, this wisdom, this kindness, this confidence, within themselves. So ask yourself that question. Remind yourself, who am I when I'm at my best? That's question one. Question number two is, how am I feeling right now? Am I at my best, or am I, somewhat lower than that? And question three is, how do I want to feel right now? And there's absolute magic in that third question. When we ask ourselves, how do I want to feel right now? The answer may come back, I want to be relaxed. I want to be more confident. I want to be more productive. Whatever it is, we draw that energy into our current experience just by naming it. If that doesn't work, there's a path, or question 4 and 5. Question 4 is, what's stopping me from feeling the way that I want to feel right now? And question 5 is, what am I willing to do right now to feel the way I want to feel? When you practice that day after day after day after day, you get really, really good at shifting your energy, and then magic happens. And it becomes not the path of 3 questions, it becomes the path of 1 question. And that question is the magic question number 3. How do I want to feel right now?
Yeah.
And just by asking yourself that question, you can shift your energy, lift your spirits, and become that beautiful, beautiful person that you already are.
Wonderful. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll look forward to our next conversation.
Thanks, Tracy. Have a great day.
Limitless is produced by Neil Haley, with music by Danny Columbi. I'm Tracy Poizner. If you're an innovator, a business leader, or a high performer with deep curiosity about the uncharted reaches of your own potential, visit tracypoizner.com for an accelerated pathway toward unimagined achievements and legacy milestones. I'll look forward to meeting you.